The product's name is Kiddy, and it's a mobile application which essentially helps parents find the right kind of childcare for their kids. In most of the families, both of the parents would be working, and they have very little time to even look after their own kids. But the problem was, despite the crucial need for a reliable caretaker, Indian parents don't actually prefer hiring caretakers. So this is kind of the aim which I had during my research to find out why this problem existed. We had a design sprint with Shiva sir in January. In that sprint, we were given this topic for my team, the topic was building a product in finding babysitters. So this is the process I followed for the research. I first did a user survey because I wanted to reach to a huge community of people. So I did a survey with more than 50 plus people. So here I made sure to include different types of parents. I wanted to reach out to single parents, working professionals, people who are not working, etc. Then I did a competitor analysis to understand what's the actual gap in the market. Then I also wanted in-depth analysis from my users. I wanted to hear their stories, their actual pain points. Made sure to include my user interviews. I had this hypothesis before I even started with the research. I thought that Indian parents preferred caretakers who are actually multi-skilled. So they preferred people who not only can look after the child, but also maybe mix in with some household responsibilities. So instead of just moving on with this hypothesis, I wanted to verify if it's correct or if it's actually wrong. So I used the surveys as an excellent medium to actually verify this hypothesis. 62% of the parents actually preferred a caretaker who were actually flexible. Overall competition lacked the transparency and safety the parents were actually looking for. The parents needed more connection and more detailed work caretakers, etc. So here I made sure to do a secondary research also, where I actually looked around the comments of parents on when they used this product to actually see what their problems were. Then I actually dived into the user interviews where I talked with 10 plus parents. So after I got all the data from my research, from my competitor analysis, the next thing I had to do is I had to kind of analyze this data, break it down, find the patterns. More than 50 people filled the survey, but about less than 10 people actually showed interest in an interview. So I could interview those people. Then I also made sure to find other parents by asking around the people I met and knew, interviewed people from the survey, and also I found some people on my own. So the process I followed here is I used an affinity mapping, empathy mapping, and user personas to actually represent all of the information I got. In affinity mapping, what you essentially do is that you kind of collect all the data you got and you start kind of grouping the data based on different features you got, etc. Empathy mapping is a visual representation of the data where you kind of categorize your data based on things like what was the user thinking, what was the user saying, what is the user feeling, etc. So you categorize your data depending on those questions. So after you do affinity mapping and empathy mapping, what you have is that you start seeing patterns repeating. You start seeing some categories happening. And based on that, you create what is called as a user persona. So one persona or one hypothetical person would actually represent a whole set of users because you collected all of those patterns together and put it together in one user. So that's how user personas work. In India, there are currently two ways in which parents find caretakers. One is through agencies and one is through friends and families where they ask around and try to find a person. No matter in which way the parents hired the caretakers, they faced a common issue of lack of verification. I heard stories about how they were scammed by the agencies, by the individuals. So there was a serious issue of lack of standardization and verifications in this industry. They wanted to do that before even hiring that person. Another behavioral thing I found out is that parents wanted to meet the caretaker before even they started hiring them. Some parents even prefer to do a demo or a trial in which they have them around for 2 days, 3 days, and then hire them. So based on that, I was able to create two user personas based on the patterns reading. This is the first persona. So talking about the behavioral characteristics, Anjali is a working professional. So this is the repeating pattern I saw in terms of the behavior. So what happens is that as she is working on the weekday, she hires a caretaker to look after the child for the weekday, and in the weekends where she's actually at home, she wants to spend time with the children, and she wants the caretaker to actually switch to a household role. So she wanted a flexible person. People in this persona usually hired the caretaker for a longer duration of time. And so it's talking about the needs of this person. They want to meet the caretaker before even hiring them. They wanted more transparency in terms of the details, etc. The second person I had was Pooja. She was a new mother. She wanted to know the process of how to look after the children. She wanted to learn the best practices. She wanted to know the past work data. She wanted essentially to understand how it is to look after a child. So these persona of users actually hired caretakers for a lesser duration of time. Let's say 2 to 3 months. So summarizing all of the data, there was a serious lack of standardization, and there was a lot of information gaps, which was the reason why parents were reluctant to hire caregivers. Now let's talk about what all strategies I could build to actually find a solution to this product. So these were some of the important strategies I made sure to include in my product. I analyzed all the data, or understood what all data the parents were actually looking for. I analyzed all of those data. I prioritized that information and made sure to include all of those data in the caretaker profile, so that the parents would be comfortable. Only when they look at the profile of the caretaker, they will have all the information they need. So they'll feel more comfortable and connected to the product, because all of the details they want are available. And I understood the behavior characteristics of my users, and I kept options for my parents to not only book the person, but also have a trial option or meet them in person before actually booking them. Another characteristic observation I made is that each parent had a different need for their children. For example, some parents wanted the children to have a nap time during the evenings. Some parents wanted a reading time, etc. So different parents had different needs. So I made sure to have a section called task, where the parents can kind of update a task to the caretaker, and the caretaker can kind of do those tasks and provide updates to the parents. Then I started to explore how the structure or the navigation would be in my product. So here is where I explored the sitemap for the project. So I'll tell my approach on why and how I do a sitemap. So before I jump into the wireframes or the actual designs of the product, I like to make a hierarchy for the different pages I'll have. So I'll first choose what all pages or sections will be in my product, and I'll give a hierarchy to what all pages are important, what all pages are secondary. So the sitemap essentially gives a whole structure to your product. So I first make an initial version of sitemap, then I go into the designs, and then I improve my sitemap based on what all features I have to add, etc. So that's how we reach to a final version of sitemap. The sitemap also helps you in creating excellent user journeys, because in the product we'll have multiple journeys. For example, one of the journeys I had in this project is that how would the parents actually find a caretaker? So that was one of the primary journeys I had. Talking about the less important journeys, that how would parents actually sign out from the app, things like that. These are less important journeys, but more important journeys is that how parents find the caretaker, how they get to the profile, how they book the person. These are all important or primary user flows. So this sitemap helps you navigate to different pages, because it gives that whole structure to the product. So that's the reason and how I implemented sitemaps. So before we start with the final designs, we actually do what is called as a wireframe. In wireframes, we don't include things like colors, typography, or the visual element or the branding part of the product. We only work on black and whites. The reason we do this is that the need of wireframes is that we finalize on the structure or the features and the content, things like that. It's kind of a low fidelity designs which helps you kind of take user feedbacks and then iterate based on the feedback you get. The aim of wireframes is that you can change different versions based on the feedback you get. So I made wireframes and I interacted with some of my users who did participate in my interviews. I called them back and had them take a look at the wireframes and took feedback from them and did different iterations based on their feedback. I'll talk about the final designs and how it was able to make an impact. Talking about the final designs, so in the homepage itself, I made sure to understand the mental models of different types of users I had. So one type of user I had is a user which has already made some bookings, has already used a product. So for them, I made sure to include a section in the top which actually makes them easier to show their current booking, future bookings, etc. So they don't have to go inside the product to actually see this stuff because it's important for them. Then I made sure to include things like top rated caretakers near you, sections like this for new parents and also parents who are using the product. And talking about this, the details I showed, like I mentioned before, I was able to understand what all details my users were looking for, what all kind of specific details my parents were looking for. And I prioritized their details and I only showed the important details on the homepage card. And I put all of the other information in the detail profile of the caretaker. Then I also understood there was a serious gap or the whole concept of hiring caretakers is very alien in India. So I wanted to kind of shorten that gap and make my users feel more comfortable. So I had sections like why us, which kind of showed why the product or why the company has a sense of security and how they approach on hiring the caretakers. And I also have sections called how does it work, which actually shows the full process of hiring a caretaker. Because like I mentioned, the process of hiring caretakers was not familiar to my users. So I wanted to give them an idea before they even start using the product. I was able to understand the behavior of my parents, and I told that they wanted not only book options, but also options to book a meeting with them or start a trial with them. So I made sure to include all of the details, showed all of the details the parents were looking for. For example, a bio, personal information, information about the languages, experience. Are they comfortable with what all types of kids they are comfortable with? A calendar which shows the availability of the caretaker. So the need or use of this kind of feature is that now they don't have to message this caretaker individually to understand where if they are available for the dates they want. They can directly see it from the profile of the caretaker. So that's a feature which helped the parents to save time. So what all certifications they had, etc. Then I talked about how each parent had a different need for their kids. Like I mentioned how different parents had a different types of services they want, etc. What my parents can do is that they can list out what all services they want, what all services they want, what all type of profiles they're looking for, etc. right in their profile. And caretakers can kind of find these people based on the profile of the parents. So that is approach I took. Then I talked about how parents can kind of assign tasks to the caretakers, and caretakers can kind of reply to the task and give feedback to the parents. So here a parent can easily select a date and assign a different task for that day. For example, these are some of the tasks. And the caretakers can kind of update them after they have completed the task. So the parents would feel more comfortable in using the products because they get feedback. So what I like to do before I even get to the final designs is that I do a process which is called as a brand archetype selection. So brand archetype essentially means how a company is viewed by the users. For example, Mercedes-Benz, how people view Mercedes-Benz is different from how people view a company like Johnson & Johnson. So there's a difference in view of the people. That is because both of these companies have selected a different brand archetype, and they've chosen to kind of make all of their services or make all of their products based on the chosen brand archetype. So their visual style, tone of talking, everything, the illustrations they use, everything changes based on the brand archetype they select. So for this brand, I made sure to select a brand archetype called as Caregiver, because Caregiver talks about creating a compassionate and caring presence, and it really connects with their users. So I thought Caregiver would be an excellent choice for brand archetype for a product like mine. So I chose Caregiver, and based on that brand archetype, I was able to choose the colors and the typography for my product. So I chose a typeface called as Satoshi, which is a very soft and it's a very comfortable font to look at. So I thought that was an excellent choice for my product, and I made sure to use pastel colors for my product to give that sense of security and a very warm feeling throughout the product. Talking about the design system, a design system is essentially a set of reusable components. It gives that clarity in design. So later, if you want to expand your products or actually make changes, a design system comes in very handy, because all of the designs are properly documented. Starting from the smaller components to the larger components, everything is properly documented. So I made sure to follow a proper practice of design system. These are some of the elements I had: the cards, the icons, the buttons, everything had a proper design system to it, and I made sure it aligned with the brand archetype I had chosen. So that was talking about the visual brand of the product. Now let's talk about how parents actually find the caretakers. So what I did is that, like I mentioned, I had all the data the parents were looking for. So what I did is that I prioritized two of the information for the search flow, and I included all of the other information right in the filters in the listing page, or in the page in which they actually see different profiles. So I'll take you to the flow of finding a caretaker. So when the parent actually clicks on the search button, they see two questions. So when do you need the caretaker, which talks about what timeline they want the caretaker and what all types of services they are looking for. So when they click on these buttons, they can expand it. So when they click on when do you need the caretaker, they can simply select the dates they want and click on next. And what types of services, they can select what all services they want. Here I made sure to include only childcare services, extra services, which shows the flexibility in services they provide, and the parents can kind of choose what all services they want. And based on the selected questions, you can see it'll take them to a listing page where they can see the different profiles of caretakers. And I made sure to include the different functionalities my parents wanted, sortings and other filters on all type of information they want. I also made sure to include a list view and a map view so the parents can easily find between caretakers. So these were some of the filters I had: the preferred gender, the age group, the number of experience, price range. All of the details the parents were looking for is properly shown in the filters section. So what happens when a user clicks on view all is that it'll take them to a separate page which only shows all of the services in childcare services or the extra services. So what I did is that what we usually follow for things like this is that in the interviews, I had my parents list out some of the services they wanted. So each parent would tell a different types of services, and based on that, I had a curated list. But when we release products like this, we do separate research on only things like this, where we only research what all features or what all services the parents want. That's a separate kind of research. The scope of this project, I asked my parents in the surveys and the interviews what all services would they want. In the profile, an interesting feature is that it had this feature called which shows the availability of the caretakers before they even have to contact them. So that's an interesting feature I had, which was not present in the other products. And I had features like book a trial, book now. Book now was present in all the products, but the parents can start a trial or meet them in person before they even start a booking. So that was a different feature I had from my competitors, and this was actually a different feature. like I mentioned, each parents can create a tailored profile based on the needs of their children and the needs of those parents. So different parents have different profiles, and they can create more in-depth profiles where they can list out what all profile of person they are looking for, what all services they want. So that was something which was lacking in the other products. And the customized tasks also was another feature. So this essentially helped parents to create tasks for the caretakers, and caretakers can update the task. So it creates a sense of security, because let's say a mother or a father, they are at the office, but when they see the updates provided from the caretaker by an image or a video, they'll feel that sense of security, because they'll know the task they had assigned is successfully done, and they have the proof for that through an image or a video. So that's a feature. That's a very effective feature I had implemented for the product. Then I also thought about, like, obviously for apps like this, we have a messaging section where caretakers would message parents, parents can message caretakers, etc. So here the problem for many of the messaging sections is that all of the messages come to in one place. So for example, if I'm already hired a caretaker, those messages would be more important to me than a request coming from another caretaker who I am not hired. So for me, a person who currently have a booking with is more important. Those messages are more important. So I made sure to do that categorization in my messages, where it shows active, past, and request. So active would show only messages of people who I have current bookings with. Past shows messages or conversations of people who have had bookings with. Request is new caretakers trying to contact me, telling them they would like to connect with me, etc. So I had that categorization, which actually helped the parents a lot. So these were some of the features I had which standed out from my competitors. The thing I learned is that always keep a open mind, and throughout this project, in the initial phases of the project, many of the times I had an idea and I will be sticking on to that idea. So that was the problem I faced. In UX, it's called marrying your idea. So that's a big issue faced by designers. So in this project, I was actually able to eliminate that problem completely, because I was always open to new ideas from my users or from my mentors, etc. This is extremely important to create a user-centric products, because as user experience designers, we have to bridge the gap between business and users. So I always made sure to have an open mind to even when I'm designing on the features or the content. So what I did in order to eliminate this is that I actually took a small printout of my user persona. So I took a small printout of these and kept it closer to mine, because user personas show me who my users are, what they need, what all motivations, goals, pain points they had. So I took a small printout of those and kept it beside me. So every time I had to make a design choice, I had a problem in designing the content, the features, the hierarchy. I looked back to my personas, took inspiration from it. I actually asked the questions, what are my users looking for? What all types of content would Anjali like to see? Would Pooja like to see? So I'll ask those questions and then decided on what all I'll be doing. So that's the approach I took from this project. So yeah.